Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. Sports talk where your voice counts. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now from the Sunbury Motors studio, here's Steve Jones.
Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. Great to have you with us today on the show. Kim Jones in just a few moments, but first our play-by-play call of the day.
1-0, here's the pitch. Swing on and lined into left, a base hit. How about that? RBI single for Nola, and it's 3-0 Phillies.
See, Charlie Manuel shows up, and all of a sudden the bats just start going. It's amazing, just on mere presence. Mere presence. Speaking of mere presence, it is always great for all of us to have Kim Jones on the show, and great to hear that you are doing well. Kim, how are you?
I'm great, Steve. How are you? Thanks so much.
I'm doing well, and of course, you know how concerned all of us were. So
yes, I do appreciate that. Thank you.
To get you back in gear, that's awesome. All right, let's talk about, to you, what are you, I mean, you have to cover your own specific stories. So, are the specific stories you've covered in the camp or camps so far would have been not just intriguing to you, but important to you?
I think an important story just overall this year is going to be the Cleveland Browns for obvious reasons. I think it's time for them to win. Their fans would certainly agree with that. The energy at their camp when I was there was off the charts, and I was there before they were even in pads. So I can only imagine that the energy level both on the field and with the fans watching, and a lot of fans were watching, was even higher. Locally, I got to talk to Saquon the other day for the first time in a long time. I actually stood and talked to Saquon. He spoke at the podium after Giants practice 2 days ago, and afterwards he sought me out, which I always appreciate about Saquon, and we had a really good chat. And I think it's going to be kind of fun, not necessarily of consequence, except when they play each other, which they do this season. But with the Jets having Le'Veon Bell, with obviously Saquon with the Giants, they're going to share a home stadium. They're competitive because you just know that they are, and why wouldn't they be? And it's going to be fun to have two running backs like that, perhaps the two best running backs in the league. I understand Dallas has something to say about that. So do the Rams if Gurley can get healthy. But it's really fun to have the two of them, and I know they've had some good conversations already. As you know, Saquon's a sponge in that way. He wants to talk to people who've gone before him, who have a little bit more experience than he does, and Le'Veon's been very complimentary of Saquon as a back and as certainly a player who's going to be in this league for a long time. So that's fun for me. Selfishly, I was also in Buffalo. I have a soft spot for the Bills, largely because of Kim and Terry Pagula, who've become actually really good friends of mine. Yeah. And it's always great to see them. And I think the Bills are going to be better, and I think their defense is going to be more than better. I think their defense, which had a good year last year, is going to be a lot of fun to watch. So, you know, selfishly, those are mostly the storylines I've seen. I also went to the Redskins. I saw Dwayne Haskins throw the heck out of the ball that day. He doesn't make every right decision, but as Penn State fans know, you know, he can deliver the ball, and he has a pretty good arm there. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Redskins, which are in a different position than some of these other teams, they're very much, it seems, in a transition/rebuilding stage, but it'll be interesting to see when they decide to go to Haskins.
When Saquon was here his freshman year, he was deferential to others, especially to other running backs in the team. He was deferential to veterans because he understood that he was a freshman. But in his second year, I started to see his leadership quality come out. Now going into his second year with the Giants, are you seeing the same thing, that same attitude of leadership in him?
Yeah, and listen, I kind of checked out of the NFL season in mid-November last year because of my illness, so I wasn't around a lot after that. I did get back to the Giants locker room before their season ended, but I started to see it before the season ended. last year, or toward the midway point of last season. He leads, in many ways by example and by sort of watch me, because he does have an inspirational style of play. He's just that talented and that good. I thought at the time, and I still think, it would have been awesome to see him and Odell, who are very close and still are very close, as teammates. That's obviously not going to happen now. And selfishly, that disappoints me. But I think for Saquon, I do think he has risen into a bit of a leader. A little bit of it's because they need him to be one, frankly. There's not a lot of energy on that Giants team, and he has to be that guy, and he will be that guy with his play and with his words at times, and certainly with his actions. So I see that in Saquon. But I will say one thing. People around here made a big deal last year during the season. He was sort of coaching up the offensive line, and they said, look at him, a leader already. And when I was back, and after my illness, when my illness allowed me to get back in the locker room, I mentioned that to him, and he goes, I was just making sure we were all on the same page. He said, I really wasn't coaching up the offensive line. So I do think Saquon deserves what we see in him, but sometimes what we see in him is a little bit more of what we want to see, and he's just, in his mind, doing his job as a teammate and obviously as a running back.
I want to get your take on, you mentioned Odell Beckham. It's not only going to Cleveland and Baker Mayfield, but he's also reunited with Jarvis Landry. Mm-hmm. Do you think that has for him to have a balance on the other side, but also have a balance on the other side that he's familiar with? Do you think that helps Beckham in all this?
Oh, tremendously, and I think it helps that they're both reunited with their position coach at LSU, where the team, in a mystifying circumstance, didn't really win. They didn't win a championship at LSU with all that talent, and believe me, it bothers those guys more than it bothers me, because I don't really care, but it still is mystifying that they couldn't actually win there. But they're back with their position coach, Adam Henry, who coached the two of them, at least, to great heights at LSU. So there's a lot of comfort there for him. I think Baker can handle him. I think he can handle Baker, because it's not just a one-way street. Odell's the most misunderstood athlete I've ever covered, and that includes Alex Rodriguez, who, as a player, sued the commissioner of baseball. So, I'm not going to fight the fight for Odell all the time. I don't need to carry that flag for him. He gets a new start here. He can do all of that himself, and I have great confidence in him. But, the rap on him is somewhat unfair across the board, and certainly in terms of, his being a selfish player and everything else. The only thing he's ever complained to me about, Steve, is losing. He is tired of losing.
Yeah, I've never one time looked at him as a selfish player. I thought he was a frustrated player at times because of the reason you just stated, because they weren't winning enough.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. I want to get to the Bills for Sean McDermott. Hearing that they're going to be good on the defensive side of the ball, they do have personnel, and they've got a coach that thinks defense in Sean McDermott. Yep. They're going to need some points. What was the read that you got on the Bills as to how they feel about the maturation process for Josh Allen?
Yeah, my sense is they feel pretty good about their running game, and Josh Allen does figure into that. You can still win in this league with a powerful running game, an effective running game, and a hell of a defense, and I think they have that in their defense. I think that they do view Josh Allen still as a work in progress. The accuracy does have to improve. Now, they think it's more about the players around him and the decision-making as opposed to the accuracy per se. And if so, then that's probably fixable. Accuracy historically has not been all that fixable once a player gets to the NFL level. But I think that they're cautiously optimistic. Josh Allen, listen, he's an imposing figure. He is enormous. He couldn't be a nicer kid either, for what that's worth, which I know isn't much. But he's a guy that's easy to root for because of all of that. But I think they'll have some growing pains, and it'll be a matter of if their defense can really carry them. And I'll tell you a little story that I absolutely love and hope to do something on this down the road when it fits, is Sean McDermott and Terry Pegula stopped in to see Cale Sanderson on their way to owners' meetings, which were out in Phoenix, but they also stopped to watch the wrestling championships. So actually it was prior to the wrestling championships, the week before, they made a stop, because they can on a private plane, in State College. And Sean McDermott, who is very curious and likes to know how other coaches manage their teams, wanted to meet Cale Sanderson for obvious reasons, right? And Terry hooked that up, and Terry went with him. And they were stunned by the idea that they walked in the week of the championships, early in the week, but the week of the wrestling championships, and the Penn State wrestlers were playing dodgeball. And it was a great lesson for McDermott, and I've talked to Sean about this, and I've talked to Terry about it. I've not talked to Cale yet about it, which is a problem because I need to meet Cale Sanderson, but we will take care of that at some point. But Sean was struck by the idea that there are different ways and that the neck up matters so much in wrestling, obviously, and the idea that Cale wants his players relaxed and to be able essentially to hone in on the task at hand when necessary, but also be able to take other skills into that room and, frankly, just be able to relax the mind in the days before that wrestling championships. And I have friends who wrestled at Penn State and know Cale well, and as soon as I started the story, they said, "Let me guess, they were playing dodgeball." And I said, "Yes, they were playing dodgeball." And he does that kind of stuff. So I love anything that brings me back to Penn State for any reason. But you bring up a Sean McDermott who doesn't have an obvious connection to our university, but he does have Terry Pagula as a team owner, and Kim, who by marriage is now a Penn Stater, and I've told her that. But I just love that kind of stuff that isn't necessarily what you would expect, but can a Sean McDermott learn from Cale Sanderson? I would probably tell you any coach in the country could learn a little something from Cale Sanderson, since all the guy does is win.
And part of the number of times I've talked to Cale, something that is important to him is he wants somebody to go out and wrestle, and he wants them to have fun.
Yeah.
Now, you can have fun when you're obviously the best, and you can have fun because you are better than somebody else. But there's some people, as you and I know, that we've covered them, Kim, that even in winning, it's a miserable experience for them. He wants this to be a fun experience where it's okay. You can make a mistake. You can make up for the mistake. Just go out and have fun with it. And that's been part of his philosophy.
Yeah, I love that. I've seen so many things, Steve, that he says either before or after the championships or a big match, or just things I've seen him, having said throughout the years, because he's been obviously a great competitor for decades. But I'm just so impressed with him. And like I said, there have been a couple of times when I've been in State College, and Mike Bevilacqua, who's married to my best friend Stacy Bevilacqua, has said to me a million times, "We can go up and meet Cale now. It's just a matter of me finding the time to do it."
Right.
Because he says if you walk in, you're going to meet him because he's there, and he's willing to talk to people and everything else. He just sounds like the greatest guy.
No, he's about as down to earth as you're going to find.
Yep.
I mean, he has no ego.
That's awesome.
169-0, no ego.
Amazing,
national
right?
championships,
never
no
loses.
He has none. He has none. I mean, it's like I tell this with people all the time about Jack Ham. This is no ego.
Yeah, that's
you wouldn't
true.
know he won a single Super Bowl. You wouldn't even know he attended one.
Right. That's a good point. Very good point.
That's just the way. That's the way. Some people are just built in such a way they're very special like that.
Yes,
you mentioned
agreed.
getting to the Redskins camp, and I think up from 30,000 feet, a lot of fans would view the Redskins as a team that's hard to root for just because of the ownership. But you get in there, and they wanted to build around a quarterback. In the end, was it your sense that they felt, and I think they drafted 15 or 16. Is it your sense that at that point they found the guy they wanted to in Haskins?
I will say this, and I've actually become closer to Dan Snyder because when I collapsed last November 15th, it was at the Redskins facility. Okay. And I've always had great admiration and a great deal of affection for Doug Williams, who I grew up watching. And every time I talk to Doug Williams, I walk away and say, I just talked to Doug Williams. And I just love that. So, but one thing I will tell you is I understand Jay Gruden might have liked other quarterbacks, and he might have liked Daniel Jones more than Dwayne Haskins. I'm not discounting that. People I respect have reported that sort of thing. I will tell you this. Dan Snyder and Bruce Allen were never drafting Daniel Jones. They were drafting Dwayne Haskins. So did they get their man? Yes, because at the highest point of the organization, they got their man. Dan Snyder told me at the Combine about, Dwayne Haskins attended the same school as his son. There was a family connection there. There was a familiarity there. That stuff can mean a lot, and to some owners it means more than others, and it meant a lot to Dan Snyder. So, we can speculate, and the Giants can suggest that there were other teams that were going to take Daniel Jones. I can tell you with authority that one of those teams was not the Redskins. For whatever happens with Dwayne Haskins, they got their guy at that point in the draft.
And I'll ask you about Daniel Jones, and I'll make it the final question so I can let you go. He's going through camp. He had a preseason look against the Jets.
Yep.
Internally, how do the Giants feel about the guy they picked?
I think they feel really good about him, and they're not afraid to tell you that. That has absolutely been their mantra this off-season and spring and summer and now into training camp. They've told us he never makes the same mistake twice. I do not believe that, because I don't believe that of any quarterback in the NFL as a rookie. They have told us how quickly he picks up the offense. I do believe that. I have no trouble believing he's a bright guy and a sponge of a mind where he's learning not only from his coaches but Eli and all of his reps on the practice field. I don't discount the idea he could be a good quarterback. I don't know that he will, but I certainly don't discount the possibility. They have done two things, Steve. They have absolutely said Eli is the starter to begin the season, but they have also mounted a campaign of positivity around Daniel Jones, and I'll tell you why. Because when he takes over for Eli, the Giants want Giants fans to believe he is a worthy successor. And they have done everything they could do on that front in terms of their actions and also their words to convince us of that. So that has been intentional, in my opinion, and they've done a good job of it. He played well against Jets backups who were running a very vanilla scheme. Yeah. And the Jets the Jets cornerbacks are terrible. But he did a very good job on that one drive. Now, we would have seen him for more, except we had a darn weather delay that cost us an hour, and that was essentially like a pitcher. Pat Shurmur took him out at that point and brought in all new guys who hadn't warmed up in a game yet. So we will see more of him Friday against the Bears. I expect that he will continue to play well, and he will, at some point, take over. It's Eli's job to keep him off the field. Shurmur told that after they drafted Daniel Jones, and nothing has changed in that regard.
There's that great story that he was down in Charlotte, his hometown, and he and his sisters went out for ice cream. And so, I guess he was wearing a Duke T-shirt, something like that. And the guy that was serving up the ice cream says, "Oh boy, Duke, I hope the Knicks draft Zion Williamson." Oh man, he says, "Are you a big Knicks fan?" He goes, "No, I'm just a big Zion Williamson." He says, "Yeah, I'm a Knicks fan." He said, "I'd love to see him go to New York. I'd love to see Zion go there." He goes, "Oh, what do you think of the Giants?" He goes, "Nah, I'm not a big Giants fan." He says, especially after how they drafted. He said, "That guy they took at 6. And right. Jones looks at him and goes, "Yeah, pretty bad, huh?"
The funny thing is, Daniel Jones has told the media here he never met Zion. I don't know how that's possible. If you give me two prominent Penn State athletes, it would be hard for me to believe they would just never meet.
Right. I mean, the wrestlers have met the basketball players.
That's what I mean. Not even, but the wrestlers are the best program we got. But the wrestlers, meet these guys, and it's strange. I think that's strange, but. Whatever. He doesn't have to worry about basketball anymore, so he can just concentrate on football, and he's pretty good at it, Steve. I mean, he has had a pretty good training camp. Not perfect. Everything in training camp tends to get blown up toward the ultra positive, and then we tear them down once the regular season starts. But he's had a pretty good camp. He really has.
Hey, it's always ultra positive with you, Kim. I enjoy every second.
I do too, Steve.
So
anytime, you know that.
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you.
Kim Jones from NFL Network. We'll come back next half hour. We'll turn our attention to Pro Football Focus. Cam Mellor looking at college quarterbacks from the Pro Football Focus point of view as we continue on News Radio 1070 WKOK, brought to you by our good friends at Sunbury Motors. When it comes to car buying, there's the other guy's way, and then there's the SMC way. The other guys force you into a vehicle you really don't want. The Sunbury Motors way lets you take the time you need to browse, ask questions, and take the test drive and think on it. For over 100 years, the Mertz family and all their employees have made your experience the most pleasant one you'll ever have. The other guys won't offer you the best price for your trade, no matter how much they say they will. The SMC way is their promise to provide you with the most money the market shows your vehicle is worth. The SMC way is to offer you all applicable factory rebates on new vehicles and generous discounts. Looking for a pre-owned vehicle? The SMC way checks each vehicle in a 200-mile radius to determine the lowest price, then beat it. It's the lowest price promise, just part of the SMC way. The choice is up to you. The other guy's way or the SMC way. The SMC way wins every time. Sunbury Motors Company in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury, and at sunburymotors.com. Selling more cars and satisfying more customers for over.
Taking your calls at 800-795-9565. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Did Shikellamy score in that play, Matt?
I guess they did.
Huh. Wow. I hear something like that, and I said to myself, give that guy an award.
And he did get an award.
He did, as a matter of fact. And he shoved it in everybody's face now for 3 months. Sits down at the stabbing. I'm an award winner. Okay. And how's that going to help us here? All right. No, he earned it. He did a awesome job, as a matter of fact. All right. Now, you want to take college quarterbacks and you want to rank them 1 to 130. That is not an easy thing to do, but that's when you work for Pro Football Focus. That is what you have to do. You have to rate them from 1 to 130. So with that, Maddie, let's bring in Cam Mellor from Pro Football Focus. Cam, welcome back. Great to have you with us.
I appreciate being here.
Okay, you have been on a roll with a lot of material lately, a lot of material, and a lot that touches on Penn State. I want to talk about the quarterback part of it. You ranked all 130 quarterbacks. That seems like it's a time-consuming thing to do. So what went into those rankings, and how difficult is it when there is a relative lack of experience?
Time-consuming, to say the least. I think I've been sitting on this one since about May. I had the numbers, had all of our data pulled. I used even our data scientists to tell me, who avoided negative plays more often than the others, who had more of a positive percentage of plays on the field when they were there. I pulled every bit of data I could, and then I had to go and I had to pull reports on who's starting, who may be the starter. We're talking all the way out from San Diego State to Boston College's Anthony Brown, and every school in between. So it was a lot of fun, a lot of work, and I'm glad it actually has been as well received. But it's been pretty fun so far.
He actually asked me on the show the other day, who do you think number 130 is? Of course, I had, and no offense at this point, I had not read the article. All right. And I said, well, my guess would be Arthur Sitkowski at Rutgers. All right. Thank you. Bingo.
That's it. Unfortunately, fortunately for Rutgers fans, they have nowhere to go but up at this point. So obviously with ranking 130 teams, 130 situations at starting quarterback, somebody had to come in at 130. But, and the silver lining there, the glimmer of hope is that he's still one of the 130 best quarterbacks in the country at the Division I level. I mean, we're talking still upper 1% of athletes that want to be a quarterback at the Division I level. Sitkowski is still in that upper echelon. So something to still hang his hat on, but somebody's got to be last.
No, I mean, again, he asked, and I just threw out the guess. Trevor Lawrence obviously is number one in all this. It's one thing for us to watch, and we saw the championship game and how he played and so forth. But statistically, and when the numbers are crunched on him, what is a separator for him, just in terms of what the numbers tell you, Cam?
He did everything that you want a Division I, a Power 5, a national champion quarterback to do. He had every throw. He has every throw in his arsenal, but he displayed them all at such a young age. He had 27 of our big-time throws, which are our highest-graded passes. So, yes, he has the big-time plays in him. However, he also, like a seasoned veteran, like a redshirt senior, limited himself to our turnover-worthy plays, we call them the lowest-graded plays, to just 5. So 27 to 5 is an incredible ratio.
Sure is.
It was second best to only Kyler Murray last year. And so we're not just talking true freshman levels. We're talking best player in the country levels as a true freshman, surrounding him, this 5-star media circus that follows him and has followed him for years now. He dealt with it, and he's dealt with it to levels that we've never seen from a true freshman before. So we're just scratching the surface, unfortunately, for the other teams in the ACC for 2 more years of him at least.
Tua Tagovailoa is number 2 there. Now, and obviously he had to battle an injury later in the season, which obviously is going to play a role in anybody's effectiveness. One thing about left-handers is they give you the optic that they aren't throwing the ball hard. I don't know why it looks that way, but every left-hander I've watched, it always looks like they're not throwing the ball as hard, even though they are. He fits the ball into tight windows, which tells you he is throwing the ball hard. What do you like about him, and what is the separator between here and Lawrence? Because there has to be one from 1 to 2.
Yeah, so I think just the way that Lawrence gets the ball down the field and how he spreads it out and how quickly he processes, I think Tua is clearly the second best player in the country and the second best quarterback in the country, and that's no slight to him. Right. It's just that's how good Trevor is. But Tua, I think, and you hit it on the head, though, with how lefties don't look like they're slinging it. But you go back to Michael Vick and the highlights of Vick, and it just looks like he's just barely playing a game of catch in the front yard. But those balls are hitting people 60 yards down the field perfectly in stride, which is effortless. And that's kind of how Tua does. He's got a little bit of a longer windup to give that maybe a little bit of that allure, but it's so effortless, and he hits the tight windows that you're calling. He throws with anticipation just as good, if not better than anybody actually. He plays super well when reading through the clean pocket as well, so he's got the highest passer rating, the second highest grade from a clean pocket, which we've developed as our most stable metric from year to year, from college to pro, but from quarterback. So Tua's we look at him and he's going to be just as good this season, and with the receiving core that I think is the best receiving core in the nation.
Yeah, led by Jerry Jeudy, who's obviously a special talent. Now let's get to the other part. I said you have to rank them 1 through 130, which means there are going to be some quarterbacks that don't have a lot of experience, which means you don't have a lot of data on them or tape. Sean Clifford comes in at 31 for you. So how do you go into making that evaluation? Because it's one thing for me to sit there, because I literally have seen him throw, 3,000 passes because of being in practice, as opposed to you seeing 7.
Yeah, so what I did is I went back for those kids and some of the programs that are starting true freshmen, like Arizona State with Jaden Daniels. Mm-hmm. And I went back, and our friends at 24/7 Sports, we have a partnership with them. So I looked at all of the composite rankings that they have on these guys, and then for Clifford, he's the highest in terms of the guys that don't have as much data on them. Right. But we do have those 7 throws, and what I looked at is, I mentioned that earlier, the big-time throws, that we have the highest graded throws. Clifford, of his 7 attempts, 4 of them were classified as big-time throws. So I went back, I watched every pass, I watched all 4 of those again and again, watched every angle that we have, and it's just, I think that we're only scratching the surface on him. I think it's safe to say we expect pretty big things from our angle, and just how well he graded last season in his limited sample size, which obviously that skews things. When you have a couple of good plays, your grade's going to jump up, obviously, just that's how it is. But when you look at those things and look at what he was able to do on those 4 passes, I even throw away 1 or 2 of them, and he's still just as good. The pump fake on the 95-yarder, that sold the move. The route was great, but his pump just sells that 95-yarder. His best throw was not even the touchdown. It was the pass against Illinois, which he splits the coverage perfectly with a well-placed ball. I mean, it's just what he does and what he showed was incredible on those 7 attempts. And I think that, there's a reason that he's the starter, and there's a reason that, somebody's transferred away by now.
Yeah. Is a question along the way. Kelly Bryant's interesting. Kelly Bryant ends up going to Missouri and all this. You've got him in the top 30, which, of course, he's also about, 28 behind the current Clemson starter. Two transfers, him and the other one's going to be Jalen Hurts. So let's get into each one of them, even though I know I've given you a loaded question here to deal with.
Oh, my Jalen Hurts take. Yes, we'll get to that in a moment.
Yes.
I really like Kelly Bryant. I think obviously he didn't make it easy for Lawrence to get the starting nod at Clemson. He was actually the starter a season ago, and until Lawrence, rightfully so, took that. But Bryant is still just as good as he was in 2017, if not maybe even better with another 2 years in the system. So he actually led the ACC in our adjusted completion percentage, which helps taking a look at how accurate a quarterback is on a throw-for-throw basis. So he led the ACC that year. He was dynamic just with the ball and then dynamic with his legs as well. So I think that, Missouri fans are going to be in for a treat with how well he can throw the ball, but if it breaks down how well he can run too. So you have Drew Lock for 4 years, and now you have Kelly Bryant that's going to be this dual threat. I think it's going to be a little bit change of pace, but I think he's going to be able to push the ball down the field as well.
And then there's Jalen Hurts, all right? You're talking about back-to-back Heisman winners. And I think the last time you were on, I think I threw out the stat of Kyler Murray had 10 300-yard passing games last season. Jalen Hurts has one in his career. You've got Jalen at 11.
So that's I think, again, Missouri's getting used to a new breed of football, and I think Oklahoma's going to have to get used to a completely new set of football that they're going to run. Yes, they have maybe three of the better running backs in the country, Kennedy Brooks, Trey Sermon, and Jalen Hurts. I'm not calling him a good quarterback because he is. I think he can get the ball to his receivers if they scheme him well enough, and Lincoln Riley has been able to show that he can scheme his quarterbacks perfectly to their skill sets. And so Lincoln Riley's going to have to adapt. Jalen Hurts is a great quarterback. He's an even better running back, and so I think if they're running this RPO game, then I think we look for Jalen Hurts to have several hundred rushing yards on the ground with those three in the backfield. But, yeah, I don't think that he's anywhere close to the caliber of quarterback of Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray in that offense.
Justin Fields, as you put in, logged 173 snaps last season for Georgia. I think he logged more snaps than people realize. But Jake Fromm was the guy, and he left to go to Ohio State. So what puts him at 16 for you?
So, again, kind of similar to Clifford, I was able to go back and I was able to watch, all of his passes last year and watch him in succession so you can actually watch how he grew. And he grew on a game-per-game basis. Yes, he was playing against the likes of some FCS competition, but he fared extremely well. And isn't that what you would want if you're a Buckeye or if you're an Ohio State fan anywhere across the nation? Even if you're a Georgia fan, if you want to see this kid succeed, that's what you wanted to watch him do. You wanted to watch him go and dominate these lower tier, this level of competition that's lower than what he should be and who he should be playing against. So I think the way that he went in, he knew he wasn't the guy, and he still was actually very accurate, and he showed off more than a 70% completion percentage, and so he's not just the guy that's going to make plays with his legs. He doesn't mind pushing it down the field, and he's got a pretty strong arm. So I like what he was able to show against the lower competition. Obviously, some Big Ten defenses are going to be a little bit different than the likes of, say, Savannah State. But I do like what he was able to showcase on just those limited snaps. And dominating against competition you should dominate against is no slight to the quarterback.
By the way, just a quick note for Penn State fans. Alan Bowman of Texas Tech is rated 26. The only reason I bring that up is his dad, Kirk, played here at Penn State. Caught the winning touchdown pass against Nebraska in 1982. So I thought I'd at least throw that name in there for everybody so they know how Kirk's son is doing in all of this. Is there anybody, when you look at the list that you put together, right, and you did it with stats, you did it with your visuals and so forth, where you say to yourself, I see something in this guy when, if I revise the list in midseason, this is a guy I'm going to be looking at circled saying, I think he's going to has a chance to move up.
Yeah, so I wanted to have Brock Purdy a little bit higher, but I have him at 8, and I think that's pretty solid. Yeah. I love the game of football that Brock Purdy plays at Iowa State, and I think that we're talking a guy that could start contending for the Heisman mid-season. So big numbers, dual threat guy that maybe doesn't get talked about enough. I love Brock Purdy, but another guy, Auburn's Joey Gatewood. I mean, number one athlete from Florida, was Mr. Florida Football or runner-up to Mr. Florida Football. He's going to be given the offense. He's been committed to Auburn, I think, since 2015. Long time he's been an Auburn commit, an Auburn fan, an Auburn guy, and so he's finally getting his shot now that Stidham's gone, and a top 50 ranked high school guy. Haven't seen a lot of him, but he's got huge expectations that I think if we see the type of high school caliber player that he was, this is a guy who rises quickly from 96 where he's at now.
Well, we're thrilled to have you part of the show because you are adding a lot to the show. Appreciate it so much.
My pleasure.
And Mellor Pro Football Focus. We'll wrap up today's show in a moment. Brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors, Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Actually, gave us a dangerous thunderstorm alert here in State College. Wow. Guess I get to watch it from the press box of the ballpark. Maddie, got to get you to come to a game sometime.
I'd love to come back. I haven't been back since I called the game with Joe Putnam 2 summers ago now.
Yeah. And you did a heck of a job, too, by the way.
Why, thank you. It was a lot of fun.
We got to get you to come over and just take a game in and enjoy it. And
definitely.
Have a good time. Yeah.
I want to come out for some football, too.
Yeah, you have to do that. Got to get out here for a football game. It's going to be an intriguing season. Let's see if they can continue I think a very good track that they have in the preseason, but there's still a lot of work to do. Still a lot of work to do on this track in the preseason. As I said, everything is still very much an evaluation right now everywhere. And it's not just, we're evaluating the quarterbacks. For example, you put a sub-package in. You work on a sub-package defensively. All right? Do I have the right guy in the right spots? Is somebody else a better fit in that spot in the sub-package than somebody else? Or we can't execute this sub-package well enough. Or we really execute this one really well. I mean, that's what you're finding out right now when you're doing your installs. It's so much more than just who is the starting quarterback. It's also about schemes, what works, and what the comfort level is. I've talked about many, many times that you can work on a particular play in practice. You can work on a particular play in practice. And if one guy can't run it, right, you can't use it. Because football is very much, so much of a team game. That's why, when we talk all the time about, like, Antonio Brown, the diva receiver. Landry Jones today became the first quarterback to sign with the XFL. When Landry Jones was the quarterback for the Steelers when Ben Roethlisberger was hurt, Antonio Brown was in the witness protection program. When Brad Johnson was the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, Terrell Owens' numbers were not very good. They're very dependent on other people. So if you've got an offensive lineman who can't handle a play, which then forces the quarterback to do something quicker than he wants to, right? It just, the domino effect. That's why there's certain times you can't use it. Joe told me many times that, Steve, I have one guy that can't do something. We can't do it. We can't use it. He said, we have a whole bunch of really, really good plays. He said that we really, really like it. And then we put them in that practical application in practice. He said, and suddenly, like after 5 or 6 times, you look at each other and say, scrap it. Let's go. Let's got to move on. It happens all the time. And that's on both sides of the ball. There was a game where there was a particular defense that they put in that in practice didn't work. And then in the game, they actually tried it and it didn't work. And it went for a touchdown. And then Penn State put together this great drive at the end to win the game in the final 30 seconds of the game. So it masked the fact that they'd used this defense. Again, it was one of those things that in practice it didn't work. And for whatever reason, at a point in the game, they thought it was a good time to try it. They tried it, and again, it didn't work. It went for a touchdown. They fell behind. Then the offense came down, boom, 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 went 85 yards and scored. Now, this was a long time ago, but it just shows you that what they do in practice, that's what if it doesn't work in practice, you don't want to be using it in the game.